Well, hello, bookish friends. Welcome back to my channel. I am doing a ranking video for you today. I am being Mr. Copycat because when I watched our friend over at Kate How Reads do her Charlotte Mary Young ranking, I thought, oh my goodness, I have to do one too. And we're always joking about how we're trying to proselytize the Charlotte Mary Young cause. So I thought, I'm gonna do my part. So here's my, well, we'll call it a missionary effort, shall we? Here is my missionary effort to continue encouraging people to give Charlotte Mary Young a try if they haven't already. I also want to wish you a wonderful, happy mid-Victober. So we're pretty well right in the middle of the month. I hope that your reading is going well so far. I am having a particularly wonderful Victober. I can't wait to share with you what I am going to be doing in my wrap-up at the end of the month. But I am on track to be Dracula. And I'm even getting some sleep. Nor am I a supernatural being. I'm very thrilled about this. All right, so let's get on to the ranking video, shall we? So currently, I have read 16 Charlotte Mary Youngs. I finished my 16th one yesterday as part of my Victober TBR and my Tober currently reading list. So I am very, very thrilled to give you the ranking of my thus read Charlotte Mary Young books. So I only have, 140 left to go? It's something crazy like that. So we will just dive in. All right, coming in at number 16, still though with 4 stars. So the lowest rating I've given to anyone in pretty much any no, I'm just going to stick with Charlotte Mary Young. I'm not going to make any comparisons. That will get too broad. The lowest rating I've given to any Charlotte Mary Young that I've read so far is 4 stars. So everything that I'm going to review on this video, I would heartily recommend. Some are particularly good starting points in Charlotte Mary Young, which I will also try and remember to draw attention to. But coming in 16th place, still with 4 stars, is Abbeychurch. Abbeychurch is Charlotte Mary Young's first published novel. So considering that, I think it's pretty fabulous. Pretty well all of the traits that I love about Charlotte Mary Young are already present there. A wonderful, wonderful realism in the domesticity of the novel itself. A wonderful kind of portrayal of family life, both how the family works together and loves each other, and also the bickering and the conflict that happens. I think that this is one of the things, maybe the thing that I like the best about Charlotte Mary Young. One of the things I love so much about her writing. Another thing that she already captures in this novel, her very first one, is the sense of the liturgical year in the church. So she writes about the beauty of the church and the beauty of liturgy, of the liturgical year, just so wonderfully. There are maybe a few novels where it becomes a little bit moralistic or a little bit didactic, but for the most part, I find that it just works so beautifully and seamlessly into her writing. And it's a very organic catalyst for the events that are happening in the family's life, rather than, that she's trying to hit you over the head with these events that are going on in the family's life. So Abbeychurch, I still totally think it's worth a read, particularly if you're a completionist, the way I tend to be. And so I am loosely reading Charlotte Mary Young's, at least fiction, in chronological order, unless buddy reads come up and those kinds of things. All right, the next one that I'm going to cover is a short story or a novella. I'm going to call it a novella because I tend to try and stay away from things like short stories or essays, like single short stories or essays in ranking videos. I like them to be a little bit more of a substantial work. The Railway Children is one that's sort of in between. It straddles the line between a short story and a novella. So we're going to call The Railway Children a novella. I really, really enjoyed this. This is also very early Charlotte Mary Young. It is very Gaskell-like in tone. So if you're looking for a short work to dip your toes in with Charlotte Mary Young, The Railway Children could be a really good place to start, and particularly if you love Gaskell's writing. So in this one, she portrays the poverty of the family really well, really beautifully, very realistically. I hesitate to say beautifully because the poverty is very apparent of these kids. And it's a wonderful, again, novel of redemption and hard things along the way, but I definitely recommend it. It's really, really beautiful. Her sense of time and place is just really wonderful. There were elements of the Railway Children that reminded me a little bit of that subplot in the BBC Cranford miniseries of the building of the railway, of the coming of the railway to Cranford. Okay, next, scenes and characters. Scenes and characters, coming in at number 14. Again, another very early work of Charlotte Mary Yonge's. I really, really loved this book, though. I thought it portrayed family life just beautifully. It introduces characters that are also going to reappear in some of Charlotte Mary Yonge's later interconnected family sagas. So for that reason, it's also interesting to read because you are introduced to many characters that recur in some later works. Scenes and Characters also has one of my very favorite quotes in all of Charlotte Mary Yonge. And actually, it's one of the quotes that Kate Howe featured on her Charlotte Mary Yonge video as well. It is, "Duty seems to me to be love doing unpleasant work." I think that it's just a beautiful sentiment, and that's the way she writes. So she doesn't write about duty in a really pharisaical way or a really, it's this enormous burden that people that want to be religious, they carry out their duty. She says, no, duty is something that's a part of all of our lives, whether we like it or not, whether we accept it or not. And duty is love doing unpleasant work. I think it's an extraordinary thought and an extraordinary truth that we may or may not be willing to embrace in our lives. So that's a really, really good one. Alrighty, next, Henrietta's Wish, another fairly early work. A really, really great example in this book, something that I particularly felt drawn to and that I connected with. Henrietta's Wish is very, very much about the ways in which we can deceive ourselves. And then obviously, hence the title, it's very much about how we can deceive ourselves about what we truly want. It teaches the lesson of a little bit, be careful what you wish for, but in a really sensitive way. So again, there is a theme there that borders on, a moral that Charlotte Mary Yonge is teaching, which she did believe in. She really used her writing in the cause of the church, and particularly the Oxford movement within the church. But I think it's a wonderful, wonderful book of mistakes and of redemption, again, of family, of pain that we can go through. Really, really great book. Another wonderful quote that, again, I'll read here off of my notes. I don't want to paraphrase. "It is a very odd thing, whenever any work of art is well done, it is apt to have so much more in it than the author intended. It is so in poetry, painting, and everything else." And I can certainly agree with that as a professional musician myself, that it's just wonderful when we can explore and discover works of really beautiful, wonderful art, which is, I think, that extolling beauty and truth in art is so important. And I mentioned in a previous video and reflection that I am concerned when I see artistic communities moving much more towards message art, or art that's meant to propel ideologies, politics, very specific messages. I think very strongly that art can be used in those mediums and should be used in those mediums, but I'm very hesitant when I start to see those things take over an artistic community, because I think that the single greatest contribution of art to human culture is that of truth and beauty and goodness, the transcendentals, as it were. So I really love that quote in Henrietta's Wish about the beauty that can be found in art, and that usually there's so much more to be found there than the artist's even original intent. I love it. It's very, very profound. Okay, then we have another novella. We're going to call it a novella rather than a short story. The Christmas Mummers. I am also going to recommend that if you can get a hold of a copy of this, this is a wonderful Christmas novella. It's right up there in enjoyment for me, along with all 5 of the Dickens Christmas novellas. I'm not going to place it, in the same category as A Christmas Carol. That is one of the great Christmas works of all time. However, I will say that The Christmas Mummers by Charlotte Mary Yonge would absolutely be up in the ranks of Dickens's other 4 Christmas novellas for my enjoyment and what it taught me. I love how The Christmas Mummers deals with honesty, how it deals with generosity, how it deals with a little bit of a mystery thrown in there. Again, a delightful, delightful cast of characters. It really, really was lovely. I read it last year, so I guess the Christmas of 2024 with a bunch of buddy readers, and I think that we all really, really enjoyed it. It is a wonderful read. It has also been published with a number of other short stories, but if you can even just get a hold of the single story itself rather than in that collection, it is well worth your time. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Okay, so 16, 15, 14, 13, 12. That was number 12. Number 11, The Long Vacation. The Long Vacation. Again, another really enjoyable novel that features characters from previous novels. I really, really enjoyed this one. Has to do with, again, the workings of family. This one is, it's definitely this high up in my ranking because I enjoyed it greatly. But this is one where I find that when I think back to it, I sort of can't totally remember what belongs to this one and then to another one that I ranked higher in the ranking video itself, which is why this one ranks lower. So I would not in any way say that this one is forgettable, but I would definitely say that this one tends to not stand out quite as much for distinct things in it that I remember really, really loving. So take that for what you will. Again, lots of family life and also high church activity in this one. Okay, number 10, and this is the one that I was saying stands out more in my memory. Number 10 is The Two Sides of the Shield. What a wonderful, wonderful story. So this one is about Dolores. Dolores starts off very roughly, but this one is basically Dolores's Bildungsroman. Not one that Katie Lumsden featured in her Bildungsroman video of recent weeks that she released. It is a beautiful, beautiful story of a character that you almost can't stand for the first at least half of the book. And this is one of those where I thought to myself repeatedly, trust Charlotte Mary Yonge, just trust Charlotte Mary Yonge. She's proven herself to you over and over and over, just trust her. And it definitely, definitely paid off. I absolutely loved all of the characters. Gracious Aunt Lilias was an absolute highlight for me. I love the way she portrays Dolores in her sort of pre-redemptive arc state. I love how she portrays Dolores as living out the isolation and the loneliness of decisions that she's made. So I love that she is able to portray Dolores not as a victim, but as someone who is living out kind of the isolation that she's brought on herself by bad decisions and bad relational choices that she has made earlier in the novel. I thought that was particularly beautiful. I really love how Charlotte Mary Yonge definitely steers away from ever portraying her characters as victims. She always rather tries to portray them as reaping the consequences of choices that they've made. So again, there is maybe an element of idealism in that, because again, I know that that we can experience being victims in many ways on a wide spectrum of trauma and a wide spectrum of culpability on ourselves. So I'm not saying in any way that this doesn't exist, but it was such a beautiful example of how Dolores did reap the consequences of bad choices. She acknowledged where this was coming from, and then she was able to rise above these consequences. That's all I'm going to say. That already almost is maybe a bit of a mild spoiler, but that is the essence of Charlotte Mary Yonge's writing in so many ways. So we're going to just leave it at that. Okay, number 9, and this is the one that I just actually finished yesterday. So this one will feature in my Victober TBR. Sorry, not my TBR, my Victober wrap-up. And that would be The Stokesley Secret. I buddy read this with Art and Michael. These men have become good friends of mine over the last little while. Definitely kindred spirits. And The Stokesley Secret is the wonderful novel of the Merrifield family, and particularly the children, and their governess, Christabel Fosbrook. And I just absolutely loved this short novel. So this is definitely longer, I think, than a novella, but it's a very short novel. This would be another wonderful starting place with both Charlotte Mary Yonge and potentially, if I was ever to do a video on great places to start with Victorian literature in general, you know, the videos where Jane Eyre is always the first suggestion, which I heartily agree with. I think that the Stokesley Secret presents a very strong case for being a wonderful place to dip into Victorian literature in general. It was incredibly easy to read. It almost read like a children's novel, except that it had way more profundity than a children's novel tends to, which I realize is a bit of a sweeping statement that children's novels aren't profound, and I strongly disagree with that. I think they can be incredibly profound, so don't read too much into that. But the story of Miss Fosbrook and these children just really, really touched my heart. I loved seeing how she unlocked her relationship with each one of these children, how she realized that each one of them needed a different sort of approach from her, different teaching from her. I loved how individual each of the children were portrayed by Charlotte Mary Yonge. They each had such a distinct character. Another really, really great quote, I actually have two to share with you from this novel. People would often gladly put away from their children or friends the very trials that are sent by heaven to prove and strengthen their will and power of resisting self-indulgence. What an extraordinary thought. I completely love that quote. And the next quote is one of the growing list of quotes that makes me believe more and more strongly that L.M. Montgomery read Charlotte Mary Yonge and was a fan of her. I'm going to do a video on that at some point because my hypothesis that L.M. Montgomery loved Charlotte Mary Yonge is growing. Listen to this, everyone. A new week was a new starting point, and he meant to spend this one well. For indeed, it is one of the blessings of our lives that we have so many stages, days, weeks, years, and the like, from each of which we may make fresh starts, feel old things left behind, and go on to lead a new life. I mean, if that's not the same thing as tomorrow is always fresh with no mistakes in it, I don't know what is. But I really, really loved this one. I strongly recommend it as a wonderful place to start with Charlotte Mary Yonge. All right, are we on number 8 now? I should have numbered these. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Thank you for your patience. We are on number 8. My Young Alcides. All right, folks, this is a strong veer away from all of the previous novels in terms of genre. So this is the first one on my list where I feel like, wow, Charlotte Mary Yonge really has extraordinary range of variety and diversity in her writing of different genres. So My Young Alcides is a wonderful, wonderful retelling of the labors of Hercules. And the really beautiful thing was that I actually read this and Gary D. Schmidt's The Labors of Hercules Beale in fairly close proximity to each other. And in both books, I absolutely loved, they both got 5 stars from me. Both books really captured a unique and wonderful and creative way to portray the labors. I absolutely loved, I did buddy read this, and the whole group, we just loved seeing, okay, how in the next chapter is Charlotte Mary Yonge going to portray and capture the labor that Hercules is supposed to be doing. I just absolutely loved this one. It's not a sprawling family saga, but it's really lively and really compelling. Next, Countess Kate. Countess Kate is another one where I feel like, did L.M. Montgomery read Charlotte Mary Yonge? I think it's very possible. Countess Kate, Kate Howe and I often joke, Kate Howe often jokes on her channel, that Countess Kate is basically a Victorian retelling of what would happen if Anne of Green Gables would discover that she was a countess. I absolutely loved the humor with which Kate was put into this situation, and I loved, you know, the stern old relatives that were trying to draw out this dignity in Kate, and she just kept getting herself into scrapes. I can't remember the aunt's name right now, but oh my goodness, it was just hysterical. The older kind of stern aunt reminded me a lot of Miss Deborah in Cranford, in Gaskell's Cranford. Just a delightful, delightful book. I also was really reminded in Countess Kate, I've referenced how Gaskell and Yonge have some similarities in some of the previous books and novels and novellas on this list. Countess Kate in some ways reminded me of Dickens, actually, because I feel like this one showed Charlotte Mary Yonge writing a child very, very convincingly. So again, I know that with some Dickens fans, Oliver Twist can be a little bit angelic and one-dimensional, which I can see, although as a novel, I really, really love the novel. But when you start looking at some of the later books in the Dickens catalog, I just think that Dickens captures childhood incredibly well. Maybe my favorite example of that is Dombey and Son. I just think his portrayal of Paul and Florence are just really, really extraordinary. And so in this, Countess Kate, it's a much shorter work than something like Dombey and Son. But I just really, really loved the way she portrayed the childishness of Kate. It was very, very believable. It wasn't just angelic, and it wasn't just some, dismissive, youthful quality, and that it was hard to take seriously or find profundity in. Loved it. Countess Kate. Another really, really good one to start with in terms of Charlotte Mary Yonge or Victorian literature in general, because it's, again, on the shorter side. And one of the things that realistically I think often deters people with Victorian literature is that all they associate it with are the huge, huge volumes of, George Eliot and Charles Dickens and that kind of thing. Much to my chagrin when I hear things like that. Okay, the next on this list, Love and Life. Love and Life, another one that I just thought, oh my goodness, Charlotte Mary Yonge knows how to write a thriller. A thriller, people. This one was riveting. I was buddy reading this one, and I will tell you, I've buddy read many of these on this list. I will tell you that as a buddy reader, I have a very, very bad habit of reaching a certain point, which in a novel, which I call the breakaway point, where I just break away from the reading schedule, I break away from the group, and I just race to the end. And Love and Life, I think I read the last third of this book in a single setting. I could not put it down. It was completely thrilling. So this is another retelling, just like my Young Alcides. This is a retelling of Cupid and Psyche. I can't recommend this one enough. It is fast-paced. There is a mystery that pretty well runs the whole story. It starts very, very early in the story, and it carries through pretty much to the end of the novel. I also think that Love and Life has a tremendously written villain whose name is Urania. I mean, what an awesome name, Urania. She is Cruella de Vil in, Charlotte Mary Yonge form. A wonderful, wonderful novel. Okay. The next one on my list, The Young Stepmother. Oh, here is where we are getting into the novels of Charlotte Mary Yonge where I thought, can I actually distinguish these anymore? I'm not totally sure that I can. They're just all so wonderful. I'm certain that all of the novels that are left on my ranking made me bawl and sob actually numerous times. So I've definitely learned that when I read the sprawling family sagas of Charlotte Mary Yonge, I do so with a box of tissues very, very close by. So this is the story of Albinia. Albinia is an absolutely glorious, glorious character. She challenged me, she encouraged me, she delighted me in so many ways. I will say that the character in The Young Stepmother that most touched me, though, was the character of Sophie. Sophie goes on a journey in this novel of self-acceptance. And it was an extraordinary journey. I think self-acceptance is something that probably most of us struggle with at some level of our being. And Sophie desires to do the right thing, very often assumes she can't do the right thing, very often gets frustrated with herself, gets frustrated with the physical limitations that she has because she has a spinal condition. And I just kind of wept at multiple points of this book, one of which was on an airplane. That can get a little awkward. But folks, the story of Albinia, actually, you know what? Albinia's husband, so Albinia's husband's first wife dies, and so she marries a widower with already a few children, and then they have some of their own children together as well. So it's also a story of a blended family. his arc also really challenged me because his flaws are very obvious at the beginning of the novel, and they can be a little bit frustrating, except that they're flaws that I saw in myself and see in myself so clearly that I just felt like, again, trust Charlotte Mary Yonge, trust Charlotte Mary Yonge. This is not going to end like this. And so I felt like when I went on this journey with Albinia's husband, what's his name? Edmund. His name is Edmund. I just felt such compassion for him and such connection to him. So this one, absolutely wonderful. Really, really wonderful. Okay, Dynevor Terrace. Dynevor Terrace is the next one. So that is my 4th highest ranked Charlotte Mary Yonge. Okay, so Dynevor Terrace, without giving away any spoilers at all, Dynevor Terrace has one of the most touching death scenes in it that I've ever seen in my life. I bawled my eyes out. This one, though, also, there was a moment in the book where it wasn't a plot twist or anything like that, but it's an event that you've been hoping for quite a long time. And there was a moment where this event was fulfilled, and I actually involuntarily like gasped and sobbed and reacted very strongly all at the same time. And it just takes incredible writing. I am a crier, but it takes incredible writing to elicit a response like that from a reader, I think. So Dynevor Terrace is a really, really wonderful novel that has a smaller cast, even though it still ranges really, really far, all the way from England to Peru. So I would definitely recommend this as another really good starting point with Charlotte Mary Yonge. It's a standalone Charlotte Mary Yonge for the most part. I think that there are 1 or 2 characters that sort of fade into Dynevor Terrace or appear in Dynevor Terrace like as a little cameo from some of her other interrelated or interconnected family novels. But for the most part, you can read Dynevor Terrace completely as a standalone. And it is one of the longer ones, though, so if you are someone that likes to sink your teeth into a big, sprawling family saga, this is a great one. I loved the grandmother figure so very, very much in this one. I was rooting for her, and she touched me very, very deeply as well. Again, another one that I would say Dynevor Terrace demonstrates all of the themes I love so much about Charlotte Mary Yonge without becoming didactic and moralistic. It presents a really strong case for forgiveness and for reconciliation and being able to admit one's own faults and errors and mistakes and ask for, reconciliation and apologize and, seek restoration and maybe even work out some restitution for your mistakes. Just an exquisite, exquisite novel. Can't recommend it highly enough. Okay, the 3rd highest on my list, Hopes and Fears. Oh, it was just so good. Now, I know this is one that Kate Howe did not connect with as much, but I loved it so much. So again, I'm going to compare this novel to another very, very well-known Victorian author, George Eliot. I've already compared some of Charlotte Mary Yonge's writing to Dickens and to Gaskell. This one reminded me in many ways of George Eliot. This is probably the one that I had to, in some ways, read not the slowest, but give myself the most space to read. Just like when I read one of the really, really big chunky books by George Eliot. The writing is a little bit denser in this one, but oh my goodness, it is one of the most rewarding things I've read maybe ever in my entire life. It's the story of Honora, and Honora is a single, older woman in her 40s who just wants to do the right thing. And it comes across the opportunity or the situation where she's going to take in 2 children into her care. And Honora's character just completely blew me away. Just gonna check my notes here a little bit. I think that this is an incredible novel that captures a lot about class, age, gender, educational background, how character is formed. So still many of the similar themes to other Charlotte Mary Yonge novels that I like. But again, those are things that I really also do associate with George Eliot's writing. Just an incredible, incredible book. It captures the very relatable experience of knowing what you are trying to do, knowing what you're desiring to do, and seeing those efforts still not meet the result that you want. And so again, another one where I cried and used my tissues, because you see Honora coming up against not failure after failure after failure, but what she interprets as failure, because she feels as though her efforts are falling short with these children, and she sees them making bad decisions and blames herself, and the children start blaming her and rebelling, and I just loved it so much. Honora is such a wonderful character. This is another one where I want to share a quote with you. The quote is this: "She did not love less those whose she had seen, but he whom she had not seen had become her rest and her reliance. And in her year of loneliness and darkness, a trust, a support, a confiding joy had sprung up, such as she had before believed in but never experienced. Her best, her all, those had been words of devotional aspiration before, they were realities at last." Isn't that amazing? So recognizing, and this is again very much in a sense of the Christian faith, but recognizing even within her own faith journey, parts of what she had longed for within her faith, but knew were maybe only sitting at an intellectual level of consent to believe, and now she'd actually experienced them and knows God to be things that she didn't know him to be before. I'm telling you, it just doesn't get any better. Except that it does, because I have 2 more books on my list. Okay, the next one, The Heir of Redclyffe. This is the only Charlotte Mary Yonge novel that I own, not 1, but 2 physical copies of. In fact, maybe now is a good time for me to start sharing some of my Charlotte Mary Yonge acquisitions. So I have a whole bunch of these blue hardback Macmillans that are beautifully illustrated and beautifully set, and they have, that wonderful vintage smell. And I have a whole bunch of them. I have more downstairs. These are the ones that I've read already. And then I also own this World's Classic edition of The Heir of Redclyffe. And so The Heir of Redclyffe I own in both. This book, I can't do a Charlotte Mary Yonge video without hugging. And I get to hug 2 books in this case. It's just exquisite. It's just exquisite. So again, I could go on and on and on and on about this one. Please read it. Just do yourself the favor and read it. This one is largely about Philip and Guy. And I don't know which one is my favorite, because I see more of my own character in Guy, but I see much, much, much more of my own story, life story, and redemptive arc in my own life in Philip. And so I kept reading the book and seeing these 2 characters interact and experience conflict with each other. And I just thought, which one am I more like? Which one am I more connected to? Which one, well, I can't say which one do I want to be more like, because that answer is very, very clear. Once you've read the book, you know which one you want to be like. I just can't recommend this book enough. I loved it so, so much. It's absolutely brilliant. I think I might have to say that in terms of the breadth of characters and community that Charlotte Mary Yonge builds, this one might have the best sort of sense of ensemble. Because it's less of, one of these closer family sagas, although I would certainly still characterize it as a family saga, but it has a much more sort of sprawling cast that end up interconnecting with each other. So again, maybe a bit more like Dickens in that sense. But the redemption and the sacrifice and the pursuit of virtue. Can I just say that I love that when Charlotte Mary Yonge portrays virtue, it is not just reduced to this silly being nice business. When Charlotte Mary Yonge's virtue has grit and it has strength, and when she is portraying the pursuit of virtue in her characters, they are striving for it. They are not just these meek, kind of anemic characters that you feel need to be fleshed out more and you can't relate to. As Anne Shirley would say, or maybe Gilbert would say, that they're mooning and pitching about. I just think it's hilarious. They're not that. These characters are struggling for virtue in their life, and they're struggling to lay things down in themselves that they recognize are destructive. And that is so, so evident in The Heir of Redclyffe. I recommend it so, so strongly. Please go read it. Okay, everyone. And the number one, I don't know why I looked at my notes. I know what my number one is. The number one is The Pillars of the House. I own this. It's in 2 volumes. This book, I don't know where to start. I don't actually know where to start. This is the story of the Underwood family. And as you can see, it's 1,000 pages. So this is definitely an epic family saga. Epic. I don't know what I want to say about this other than that Felix Underwood, who's the oldest of the large family of children, Felix Underwood is who I want to be in life. That's a big statement. Felix Underwood recognizes what he's been given, recognizes the struggles in his own life, recognizes what his own ambitions are and what he feels like he could contribute both to family and society, but continually makes choices to put family first, to put duty first, but again, not in an obligatory sense. He does it with joy and with surrender. And he puts others first, and he serves rather than demands. I don't know how much more I can say because I don't want to get into any spoilers of character, but this novel just blew me away. It just blew me away. It reaches all the way to the States. It takes place, again, a lot in England as well. There's a lot of travel that takes place in this book. I just can't recommend it enough. I'm starting to gush rather than sort of analyze or comment on. The Pillars of the House is very possibly my favorite novel of all time. It is certainly, I'll give you a little sneak peek into my updated ranking video that will be coming out in the next several weeks. Next ranking video of Victorian literature. The Pillars of the House has actually, upon reflection, claimed the #1 spot. So it's for sure my favorite Victorian novel of all time and possibly my favorite novel of all time. So there you have it. I have one other thing that I did want to say, and that is that it has one of the greatest portrayals of disability representation that I've ever seen in literature. Geraldine, she's one of Felix's younger sisters. Her nickname is Cherry. And what I love so much about it is the dignity that Charlotte Mary Yonge gives this character, and that the character Cherry is written with the inherent vulnerability that is realistic when you have a disability that, like she has, particularly for that time period. But there's nothing weak or fragile about Cherry's character. She's written with such strength. So it's Charlotte Mary Yonge gives her dignity and strength and a role in the family, and it's just so beautiful. I cannot recommend it enough. All right, everyone. That is my ranking of Charlotte Mary Yonge for the 16 books of hers that I have currently read, with well over 100 still to go. I hope that you are having a wonderful Victober. I hope that your Victober plans include Charlotte Mary Yonge. And I just want to wish you a wonderful second half of the month, and we will see you again soon. Take care, everyone.